Welcome today to our wonderful High Five Live friends and family. We're so grateful to be with you, especially today with our amazing guest. We can't wait to tell you about Wendy.
Thanks for being with us, Wendy.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
So yes, as people get on, we would love you to let us know where you're watching from.
Yes.
And we have guests all over the world that join us, and we so appreciate it. And we just love to have these guests on that can share their own experiences and their perspectives and help us all learn about the gathering in the latter days.
And talk about all around the world. Wendy is the social media marketing director at Family Search.
Is that the way you say it? We got it?
I like that you added director. I usually say well, let's go with director.
And Weekly has so many broadcasts all over the world and sends to over 50 countries. So she's used to doing this wonderful thing. So you started these broadcasts because COVID-19 hit and trying to help people.
Yes.
And tell us about that and how's it going?
Okay, well, thank you for asking, and I'm so glad to be here, and welcome to everyone. And I see Olivia. Olivia, so good to see you, and people from England, and this is wonderful. So I've worked at Family Search for 5 years, and some of the things I've done are in social media and kind of managing our channels and content and things like that. And we've always wanted to do something a little bit more casual and intimate, if you will, but it never felt right necessarily, because we tend to, we're a large organization with people all over the world, and how could we connect? Typically we would have done before COVID, we would have done something more formal. And so since we went home and we were in quarantine, it was approved to do exactly what you guys are doing, which is connecting from one home to another home, to everybody's homes. And it's been such a wonderful experience for us. And we have really been able to kind of share some of the behind the scenes of Family Search and the people.
Oh, amazing. People love that.
And these are the people who build the tools or do the research or help acquire records. And every single one Family Search employee we've had, they just have communicated how much they love their job and how much they love doing what they do. And then we get to talk to other people, amazing people like you guys. And so it's going fantastic. Thank you for asking. And it's just,
and when are your broadcasts?
Gave me a microphone, and I was like, this is the best thing about
Never.
For me, is someone said, here's a microphone, or I asked for it, and they said, sure.
And you are amazing at what you do.
Do you want to tell them when you broadcast? I think you have a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Wednesday.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So we're Tuesdays on Instagram at 11 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time. This is Family Search. And then Wednesdays is Facebook at 4 in the afternoon. And Facebook tends to be a little more technical. And then Instagram is a little more conversational. And we talk to people who are just connecting to stories and family history all over the world. So thank you. Thank you. We'd love to have your guests come.
You.
And
You're doing
speaking
so
about
much
all
good.
over the world, we've got people joining us from Topeka, Germany,
Wow.
and Georgia, Virginia. It's exciting. Thank you for
So
being
fun.
with us
Thanks
as
so
we talk
much.
about this healing power of collaborative storytelling. And, I think, Wendy, we were born under the same star. We live and breathe
think so
family
too.
stories, don't we? It's just, they are the glue. They are glue to our families to hold us together and help us. So what do you want to tell us about the collaborative part of storytelling?
Okay, this is so exciting, and I have amazing people I work with, and I've had some fantastic interns. And let me tell you how deflated they are when I ask them to read like 10 academic journals that are like 30 pages long and really dense, and then boil it down to like, the tidbits that are meaningful. They don't like that assignment. But so one of the things we were researching was this idea of family storytelling, right? Because we talk a lot about storytelling, but what does it mean to tell a story as a family? And there's a ton of research out there. And some of the big takeaways are this word collaborative. And so are you as a family participating? Is everyone participating in the story?
Not just one person.
Yes. Is there what we would call perspective taking? Are other people's perspectives being considered? Or is the one person in the family saying, this is what happened, with the...
You should listen.
Yes. And so it's this idea, and also it obviously expressiveness is something that works. So collaborativeness, the way people say we-ness, and what that means is
I like that.
did that. We were this as a family. And so when the researchers, they watch families with sort of functional story skills, and then ones that they wouldn't identify as functional. And then we can pull out, what works. And so collaboration, togetherness, are you changing the story based on other people's, memories or perspectives? That's a good
jump in and share what they're feeling, right?
Yes, yes. And so I don't know if the word is functional, but a collaborative family story would be one where someone kicks it off and then other people contribute, and there's a lot of respect and humor and recollection. And we know when we remember things, we tend to remember them more positively than maybe they were, but that's why nostalgia is so powerful, right?
Yes.
And so if you can pull that together, and then as a family, you are being collaborative, you're taking turns, you're sharing different versions, there's different pieces that come up, and there's the sense of togetherness, as opposed to a sense of one person is the storyteller, right? And so it's not like every story you tell has to be everyone contributing, but it's much more powerful and collaborative when that's the case. So that's things to do. Now, do you want to know what not to do?
Yes, tell us what not to do.
Okay. And this one is, and if people are interested, I can send over the links to the really dense 40-page academic journals. You can read them. But some things not to do are to be the only person speaking. I mean, this one's obvious, right? Because that isn't collaborative. And then oftentimes, we'll tell stories because there's something maybe we've learned from them, and so when we share our perspective of how we've learned, that's a good thing. But if we're telling stories to kind of shame people, and say, well, you shouldn't feel the way you feel because, right. And so you don't want to discount another person, but you can share from your perspective, which is, I learned this lesson and I think it's valuable. But if you say, well, you should feel, or you should think, or right, so that's very dismissive. And any behavior, people tend to really connect when we are authentic and we share like the hard stuff too. So if we just paint everything with a positive brush and nothing bad ever happens, and we share because we want to be perceived a certain way, that tends to not resonate either. So you want to be, you don't want to lie. I mean, sometimes you can exaggerate maybe some of the story, but
just at certain points, right?
Yes. And, I think story is just such a way for us all to connect and understand each other. And so this idea of rushing in, if you're telling a story as a family and wanting to assert yourself, let people contribute. So you don't own the stage yourself. Don't try to shame people. Don't try to make it like you should, and try to not be judgmental as you're doing it. And then if you're the only person talking, which sometimes we are when we tell stories, right? It's not as collaborative. And so think of how you can take everyone's perspective. So, I mean, those are just the quick tidbits about, how to be more collaborative. And if you think of collaborative as one of those C words, connective, right? We tend to connect when we contribute. Oh, that's another C word.
Another C word. I love it.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting. We've learned that there's different reminiscing styles. And one that is when it's expressive, and I think I talked about that. When you're expressive and engaging, people just tend to really connect more with that. And we went, I think it was about 3 years ago, and a team from Family Search, and we tried to understand how families are doing family history. Mm-hmm. And we talked to a lot of families with younger kids, and it was so interesting when the kids would tell us the types of stories they remembered. Do you want to guess what types of stories they remember?
Adventure stories?
They love the adventure, like the grandpa who wrestled the alligator, or like, there were lots of, when we talked to people from Utah or North America, lots of pioneer stories of like, they had to sleep here, or like they love adventure. They also, funny enough, and this was like, it became almost like an inside joke. The kids love stories that include animals.
That is really interesting.
Animal. And so if you're looking at how you can get, what ancestral stories maybe to share, if there's an adventure story, if there's an animal type of story, and then they love humor, right? The kids love humor. And so sometimes we might, as parents or grandparents, we might say, well, I want to share this lesson because it's really powerful to me. And so when you put yourself outside of what it is for you, and maybe the kids would like something different, that helps you when you pick the types of things to share, I think.
Right.
So what you're saying is that story of mine about the wild buffalo attacking me in Wyoming is really kind of classic.
Your grandkids.
Yeah, we remember it really well.
Yes. Is that true?
Yes. And some of them were there and watched. And
so how did you put yourself in a situation to get attacked?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll tell you that story later.
I'm giving you the responsibility for that because I'm like, you're a smart guy. I know that.
Don't get too worried. So Wendy, what does Family Search provide? What are some of the ways that stories can get started about your ancestors?
Story starters. That's a good one.
Yeah. What do we look for on Family Search to find our stories?
Okay, great question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Well, we have something really exciting coming out at the end of the year that you'll have to have someone on to talk about it, because we have found in our research that, when you look at a record, for example, so if you've created your account and you've connected to the family tree, sometimes you'll get hints, and the hints will be these records, and maybe there's a census record, or maybe there's an obituary. And so if you look in those records, especially things like obituaries, there's tons of stories in there. And so it will give you names and locations and relationships. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of digging, but finding things out in records can be really compelling. And even if you read about a town or maybe a house, and that house you've never been to that your ancestor lived in, you can look up that time period, and you can look at, like, on Wikipedia, you can Google Earth things and get a sense for what that time period was like. So for example, I had seen on a census record, an occupation was a button maker.
We have a button maker.
We do.
Yeah, I think, okay, see? And it's so, like, it's fascinating, but it's also, if you think about working conditions in places like that, right? Really difficult. And so by doing just a little bit of research, and when I say research, I'm not a researcher. I'm talking Wikipedia, right? You can get a sense for what their life was like. And so that's a way to connect by looking at records. So if you don't have a Family Search account, create one, connect to your first deceased ancestor, and you'll get record hints. And in those record hints are ways for you to find stories.
I gotta tell you, her grandfather went on a mission with her grandmother, and they went to Hawaii, and they were over there, she for 2 years, and he stayed 5 years. And we've always told that story. It was a favorite family story, and he had a mandolin band that he conducted. I mean, all of it's been really fun.
We found all this out on Family Search.
But then we got this hint from Family Search and a little story that was connected about somebody else that knew him. And we always wondered why he served 5 years. And this one said his family could not get the money together to get him home, so he had to stay 5 years.
So he was really faithful, but he also couldn't get home.
Sorry. I'm like, don't feel sorry for him, but I do feel sorry that happened, right? See,
well, the sorry thing is that she waited 5 years for him to get home.
Oh, well, I'm obviously
years after she got home. But there's this missionary site that we can look for those kinds of stories, right?
Yes. There's fantastic
women in your history. There's what else? There are
pioneer stories.
The pioneer stories.
And we just had one come out, female ancestors. And so, and that one was applicable to so many people. And we had people that asked, why are you highlighting female ancestors? And one of the reasons is they're harder to find because early on, some of them weren't even documented as individuals. They were seen more as property. So it's like, yes, when we find stuff, we want people to look at the records and see, and just have some patience and curiosity when you're trying to kind of explore, you know, because you'll be so surprised what you can find. And I would say newspapers and obituaries, they're just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And then go to cemeteries. I know that sounds, I don't know how many people.
Halloweenish.
We're going to be like, but on the mobile app, on Family Tree mobile app, there's a feature called Map My Ancestors. And so, and it's great because you can find, and I did this during quarantine or pandemic, however we want to call it. I've gone to multiple cemeteries and found, you know, and while I'm there, if there's memories or stories about that ancestor, I like pull it up on my mobile app. And, you know, it's amazing how much more I remember when I'm standing in a place that's associated with them, as opposed to like at home and reading about them. So get out and try to like explore and be curious, and the things that you find, you'll be surprised by how much you can uncover and just connect to. So that's a great question.
So tell us how this has affected your family.
Which one, the stories or the pandemic?
Not the cemetery visits.
Well, it's funny because, well, I don't know if it's funny, but I've been in scrapbooking. Like that was my kind of first foray into family history. And so I have 5 sons, and they're used to being photographed. And, you know, when they were younger, they were in, you know, magazines and things like that. And so it's just kind of standard for them. But I'll tell you, I have a couple of baskets of scrapbooks that I kind of rotate out. And, you know, when we get together, typically on Sundays or birthdays, they love to look through them. And one of our favorite things to do is on birthdays is plug in the laptop to the TV and go through Google Photos.
Yes.
And yes, right. And so my kids, and what's interesting, and I'm sure this is what other people have experienced, when you have something physical, like a photo or scrapbook, or you're looking at like a photo, it brings the stories out, right?
Sure.
And so the other thing I do now that my kids are all grown is I'll log into Google Photos and I'll share something from like 5 years ago. You know, we have a family group message where I'll share photos, and that sparks conversations. So for now, the story is more about like, it has a lot to do with memories and then things that we like to do as a family. Those are kind of where the stories come up. And I have to tell you guys, we were on a sunset walk on a Sunday, and it was so beautiful. And I was like, okay, you guys, I want to take your picture. And I have this picture, and like my kids, like I said, they're all grown. Their faces are just like, you know, and I like all of them. And I am like, I posted this on one of my social media accounts, and I'm like, this is what you look like as a grown-up of a scrapbooker. When your mom says, you know, can I take a picture? And they were just like so irritated. So it doesn't always work, right? Like it doesn't always work, but what works is trying and connecting.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's a great question.
Yes.
So didn't you produce a fun book for your niece or someone?
Oh, yes. Okay. So one of my favorite things to do too is to think about what we've learned in the past and how it helps us today as we so you connect your past, you know, present and future. And this was something you guys, and thanks for inviting me to share this. I have a niece who, when she turned 16, I wanted to create an album that highlighted her maternal relatives. And so one of my favorites, like, I mean, I think a lot of favorite. This is Patrina, and she was called Patrine, and she came from Denmark as a young woman by herself. It's a very typical pioneer story of total bravery. Oh. And she came and married James Daly. Let's see if you can see that. And he was a polygamist and just fantastic. And so she had 12 children who lived, who survived, and she had a set of twins, and I have twins. And so as I've learned about her and the things that she's had to overcome, it has always been something that's helped and grounded me. And I think that's what happens when we connect to our ancestors and we find commonalities and we find things that we remind ourselves, they did hard things. We can do hard things, right? Like and you kind of stand on their shoulders, so to speak, and you're reminded and grateful of the sacrifices they made when she joined the church. And no one, they left school in Denmark because no one would talk to them because they were members of this, Mormon faith that everyone thought was so bizarre. So I remind myself a lot of the opportunities I have today are because of the sacrifices from the past. And I think, it's really something it makes you feel like so much more grateful, I think, for me anyway. And I don't know, it's powerful. So I invite everyone. And be prayerful about, if you're going on family search or if you're confused or if you're overwhelmed, be prayerful and just say, please help me, look for or connect with a story or a person that is either, has a message to share, right? I think we forget, it's okay to offer a prayer right before you, you go on family search and start digging around. Just ask to be led and inspired. And I found that personally to be very powerful as I've embarked on different experiences connecting sort of to the past. So I invite people to be prayerful about it.
Absolutely.
So yes. That's so true.
Yes. Oh, anything else that you would like to leave before we close? We could talk to you forever. We're going to have you.
Fun. Something that, and I saw Olivia's name pop up and I had a chance to talk to her about this. I think it's important especially as we uncover stories, some of them are going to be hard and painful and that's okay. That's totally normal. I think all of us have those stories, and even our own stories can be sort of hard and painful. And, I grew up in a home where my parents didn't talk about stories because their childhoods were so painful. And I completely respect and honor that. And if you're in a situation like the rest of us who are experiencing, hardships, allow yourself some grace as you are exploring, and understanding your story. Be gentle with yourself, and even as you go back, be gentle. It's not all going to be adventure stories or, fun collaborative stories, right? Some of it's painful. Some of it's hard to kind of sit with. And the way I cope with that is I do personal journaling that kind of helps me, kind of process that, or I talk about it. And so, I don't want people to associate any sort of shame or anything with their story or understanding someone else's story. So I think as we are gracious to ourselves and our ancestors, it's amazing how that helps us connect with other people. So practice empathy with yourself and with others, and just know that we all have hardship. And there's all those times where, there might be stories we never want to tell, and that's okay. There's the positive and there's the challenging, and we together, those things make up life. And I think remind yourself that that's okay and you're totally normal. And I always like to let people know that, because I think it's easy to say, oh, look at Wendy in her pink room with her quilts, and everything's great, and I can say, I have plenty of challenges.
Yeah.
And, but I'm not ignoring those challenges. I'm working through them, and they're part of my story. And sometimes when I talk about those things, people really connect to that. So don't be afraid to share those stories either.
Where would he be if Nephi hadn't said, "Oh, wretched man that I am"? I rejoice, but I ache inside because I groan within myself because of my weakness. If we didn't have people willing to share with each other that kind of side of life, then we would miss so much of what we're all going through.
Yes. Liberty Jail, Gethsemane, all these times and places that represent the humbling hardships. I really connect to those.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind people that, all of your story is beautiful and worthwhile to record.
It matters, and it matters to the Lord.
Yes.
It matters to your posterity. So record them. Use Family Search to.
We love you too.
It's so easy now. Easy. I'll be sitting with my mom and she'll start talking, and I'll just go on my phone, and get those stories so everybody can hear and share them.
I love that. And, spend time with people in your family and ask them questions and be curious. That's the other thing I like to remind people. Just be curious about the world and the people in it. And that, I think, really invites a lot of connection and storytelling.
Yes, Brenda made a comment here that she said the worst thing is when there's no one alive to ask about these things. So take advantage. Well,
they're still here.
Yes.
Yes, you're right, Brenda. And
Yeah.
I bet Brenda has some stories that other people want to know about. So
Right.
make sure that this is the other thing I do and think about is the stories you want to ask people, like the stories I'd want to ask for Trina, the things I want to know about her. Those are the things that I could, journal and leave behind. The very things that you want to know tend to be things that you have that you can share.
Yes.
So great.
You guys, this was so fun.
Thanks, Wendy, so much. It's been so fun.
We adore you. And
I adore you. I think you guys
do. Thank you for sharing this and the healing power of collaborative storytelling, of joining forces to make sure that these stories are recorded and heard and listened to. And it gives us such empathy, right?
Yes.
And yes, I was going to mention that on the 21-day experiment, maybe you can talk about this a little. You shared so much about empathy. Tell them where to find that and just a little bit before we close about what that experiment was and how it's going to continue.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, 21 days connections experiment is something that Olivia created based on this Sister Nelson's 2015 women's conference or BYU women's conference talk, where she invited people to do 21 days of family history. And so they created this awesome, setup to facilitate that. And I had opportunity just to talk about empathy and how to practice empathy. It was very brief. I actually do this at work. I have some empathy trainings that I do. So it's something I love. But
if you can go listen to that and learn.
Yeah, put a link, Olivia, or someone put a link to that video here if you're wanting to learn more about it. But
Please.
Yeah, empathy. We could do a whole thing about empathy.
Okay, let's do it.
We so appreciate this, and we appreciate all you do and all Family Search does for people over the world. It's growing all the time and changing.
We're releasing 20 new languages at the end of the year. There'll be 20 more languages.
Isn't that amazing? That's so
amazing. Our
too. Do you want to just update us on Roots Tech?
Come to Roots Tech party, you guys. Roots Tech Connect. It's going to be 50 hours of fun. Okay, you don't have to do all 50 hours, but there's going to be and it's free and it's virtual. So I think it's February 20. At the end of February. Rootstech.org is where you can register. It takes no time at all. And there'll be classes on demand. There'll be main stage keynotes, and there's a music competition, super cool stuff. We're at Family Search, we're all just hunkered down, working on it. You guys are helping. And please join us. We would love to open our Family Search and Roots Tech arms and extend our family even bigger. So join us. We invite
100,000 people registered already.
And we have 175 countries participating.
So amazing.
You do not want to miss it.
That's right. So register now because you'll be getting information as months go along.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy, so much. It's so great to be with you.
Fun.
Thank you. Thanks for being
Thanks
with
to
us.
everybody for tuning in. And please share this with others. The information you received is so useful and will bless your family in so many ways. So please just reach out and share it with everyone you know.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks.